It's 5 o'clock, very good evening. Our main story is that the Prime Minister has now received his copy of the Leveson report into press standards ahead of its long-awaited publication tomorrow. Well, now let's talk to Mark Lewis, who's the solicitor who represents the family of the murdered schoolgirl Millie Dowler and other phone hacking victims as well. He's in our central London studio. Mr. Lewis, thanks very much for joining us. When the Prime Minister talks about having a system in which the public can have confidence, what for you would represent such a system?
Well, I think you have to remember that it's not just the press that was in the dock, but also the politicians, the MPs who were in the dock, answering questions about how close they'd got to Parliament, how close they'd got to the press. So what we need to have is a system where we remember it's the public who have a chance to have some say. This is all about independence. I know you've been talking about, and your report talked about, statutory regulation, but what has been said is that there's going to be an independent regulator. It's time for the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister made a commitment saying that as long as the Leveson report wasn't bonkers, then he would hopefully implement it. And I think people, the Dowler family, people generally want something that's implemented that is workable and sensible to ensure that the excesses of the past, you know, you heard Max Mosley there talking about what had happened in lots of royal commissions, etc. None of them had been implemented. It's time for the press to regulate itself, not to regulate itself, to be regulated in the same way as lawyers are regulated. There was a talk this morning about the Independent Police Complaints Commission as a separate model, but that was a creature of statute. The statute says something else so it can be independent.
It's important, isn't it, for clarity, also for lots of viewers who'll be just trying to work out where these arguments are leading. When you say you want something that's workable and sensible, could that be achieved without a statutory framework, in your view?
I think it has to have a statute behind it. We talk about statutory underpinning, but it's an independent regulator with a statute behind it that says this is in force, so that newspapers over a certain size are regulated in the same way as TV companies are regulated, so that there is a complaints body, a body that imposes proper standards, proper ethical standards, not a Zimbabwean regime that's telling people what they can and cannot publish. Of course, you know, you heard the editor of The Independent saying, well, nobody's going to be telling him what he can and cannot publish, but if he publishes something that is being obtained, which is not in the public interest and has been obtained in a way that was improper, then of course there should be a professional body, a professional organisation holding it to account.
Just a thought as well about timescales. The Prime Minister clearly wants to achieve some kind of consensus on this. There'll be some taking stock on it, obviously. Do you fear that that process could take too long? When would you like to see some concrete responses from government on this?
Well, really as soon as possible. But there's been a year spent on the Leveson inquiry, which was an appointment of David Cameron, the Prime Minister. All parties said, we're passing this to a Lord Justice to investigate, not least because they were involved in it. So this should not be kicked into the long grass so that we lose sight of it. There'll be a general election in 2 years' time and it'll all disappear. If it's going to be done, it needs to be done now. It needs to be done very quickly. And I understand the legislative framework is such that it could do something very quickly.
Mr. Lewis, once again,
Support it.
Thanks very much for joining us.